Before the entire world watched Clint Eastwood have what appeared to be a public breakdown while arguing with an empty chair, he was Hollywood's most respected elder statesman. This is the story of how 12 minutes at the 2012 Republican convention turned a living legend into a national punchline, sparked questions about his mental health, and created the most bizarre political moment in modern American history that people still can't explain. So, Mr. President, how do you handle promises that you have made? Clint Eastwood asked the empty chair beside him as millions of Americans watched in bewildered silence. Before that moment on August 30th, 2012, he was Hollywood's most respected elder. This is the story of how 12 minutes destroyed that reputation forever. The 2012 Republican National Convention was supposed to be Mitt Romney's moment of triumph, the carefully orchestrated event that would launch him toward the presidency. Every detail had been planned months in advance, every speech vetted and rehearsed, every moment designed to present a unified professional image to the American people. Clint Eastwood's participation had been kept secret until the last moment, a surprise that convention organizers believed would electrify the audience and demonstrate that even Hollywood legends supported the Republican ticket. At 82 years old, Eastwood was still commanding respect as both an actor and director, his recent films like Gran Torino and J. Edgar, proving that age hadn't diminished his relevance. The decision to invite Eastwood had come directly from senior campaign officials who believed his presence would send a powerful message. Here was a man who embodied traditional American values, someone who had portrayed heroic characters for decades and had recently been praised for his thoughtful approach to complex social issues. His appearance would demonstrate that the Republican Party wasn't just for politicians and activists, but for respected cultural figures as well. Behind the scenes, there had been minimal preparation for Eastwood's appearance. Convention organizers had been told he would deliver brief remarks supporting Romney and criticizing President Obama's performance. They had been assured that he would stick to basic talking points and keep his comments brief and focused. No one had thought to ask for a copy of his speech or to conduct a rehearsal. This lack of preparation reflected the campaign's confidence in Eastwood's professionalism and judgment. He had decades of experience speaking publicly, had appeared on countless talk shows and award ceremonies, and had always presented himself as articulate and thoughtful. There seemed to be no reason to worry about what he might say or how he might say it. The stage at the Tampa Bay Times Forum had been set with a simple podium and the standard convention backdrop. But at the last minute, someone had added a single empty chair to the stage. Later, no one would be able to definitively explain who had made this decision or why. Some claimed it was meant to symbolize Obama's absence from the conversation. Others suggested it was simply a prop that had been left behind from an earlier segment. What no one anticipated was that this empty chair would become the central focus of one of the most bizarre political speeches in American history, a moment that would overshadow everything else that happened at the convention and create lasting questions about Eastwood's mental state and judgment. When Clint Eastwood walked onto the stage at 10:25 p.m. Eastern Time, the audience of Republican delegates erupted in genuine enthusiasm. Here was a Hollywood legend, a man whose films had defined American masculinity and heroism for generations, appearing at their convention to support their candidate. The applause was thunderous and sustained, reflecting real excitement about his unexpected presence. Eastwood approached the podium with his characteristic slow, deliberate walk, wearing a navy suit and looking every bit the distinguished elder statesman. The crowd's energy was infectious, and he seemed to feed off their enthusiasm, smiling and waving in acknowledgement of their warm reception. But from his very first words, it became clear that something was different about this appearance. Instead of beginning with prepared remarks or standard political rhetoric, Eastwood started with a rambling observation about his surprise at being invited to speak. His delivery was halting and uncertain, lacking the crisp confidence that had characterized his public appearances for decades. "Save a little for Mitt," he said, referring to the applause, but his timing was off and the joke fell flat. He then began talking about his long career in Hollywood, making comments about liberals and conservatives that seemed disconnected from any central theme or message. The audience remained supportive, But there was a growing sense of unease as Eastwood's remarks became increasingly disjointed. He talked about his time as mayor of Carmel, made references to his films that didn't quite make sense in the political context, and began gesturing in ways that seemed erratic and unfocused. It was about 3 minutes into the speech that Eastwood first acknowledged the empty chair that had been placed beside the podium. "So I've got Mr. Obama sitting here," he said, gesturing toward the chair as if the president were actually present. The audience wasn't sure how to react. Some laughed nervously, others remained silent, uncertain whether this was meant to be a joke or something more serious. What followed was the beginning of what would become the most surreal moment in modern political convention history. Eastwood began having what appeared to be a conversation with the invisible President Obama, asking questions and then pausing as if waiting for responses that would never come. The delegates in the audience exchanged uncertain glances. Campaign officials watching from backstage began to look worried. Television commentators struggled to find ways to explain what they were witnessing. And at home, millions of Americans watched in bewildered silence as one of their most respected entertainers appeared to be having a very public conversation with an imaginary person. What happened next would become the defining moment not just of the 2012 Republican convention, but of Clint Eastwood's public legacy. For nearly 10 minutes, the 82-year-old legend engaged in what appeared to be a genuine conversation with an empty chair, asking questions, responding to unheard answers, and displaying behavior that left viewers questioning his mental state. "So, Mr. President, how do you handle promises that you have made when you were running for election? And how do you handle them?" Eastwood asked the chair, his tone suggesting he was genuinely expecting a response. He paused, tilted his head slightly as if listening, then continued. "Well, I know even people in your own party were very disappointed when you didn't close Gitmo." The audience didn't know how to react. Some delegates laughed nervously, others sat in stunned silence, and many began looking around to see if anyone else understood what was happening. Convention organizers backstage were frantically trying to figure out how to handle the situation without creating an even bigger spectacle. Eastwood's conversation with the invisible Obama became increasingly bizarre and inappropriate. At one point, he wagged his finger at the chair and said, "What do you want me to tell Romney?" "I can't tell him to do that. He can't do that to himself. You're absolutely crazy." The audience was now clearly uncomfortable, with many delegates looking embarrassed rather than entertained. The most shocking moment came when Eastwood appeared to respond to something the imaginary Obama had supposedly said. "What did you just say to me?" "What do you mean, shut up?" The crowd gasped as he continued. "Actually, he was probably trying to be polite and say something else, but we can't say that because it's not politically correct." Television cameras captured the faces of prominent Republicans in the audience, many of whom looked mortified by what they were witnessing. Mitt Romney's wife, Ann, appeared particularly uncomfortable, her usual composure replaced by obvious concern. Other party leaders tried to maintain supportive expressions, but their body language betrayed their anxiety about the unfolding disaster. The speech had completely derailed from any recognizable political message. Instead of endorsing Romney or criticizing Obama's policies in coherent terms, Eastwood was having what appeared to be a breakdown on national television. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from confusion to horror to mockery, with the hashtag Eastwooding quickly trending worldwide. As the minutes dragged on, it became clear that no one knew how to end this debacle. Eastwood showed no signs of wrapping up his remarks, and convention organizers were trapped between allowing a respected figure to finish his speech and protecting the party from further embarrassment. When Clint Eastwood finally left the stage after his bizarre 12-minute performance, the damage control efforts began immediately. Republican operatives who had been celebrating what they thought would be a triumph were now scrambling to explain what millions of Americans had just witnessed on live television. The initial response from campaign officials was to frame the speech as unconventional but effective. Romney campaign strategist Stuart Stevens told reporters that Eastwood had brought energy and enthusiasm to the convention. Other surrogates claimed that his performance had been authentic and refreshing compared to typical political speeches. But these efforts at spin were immediately undermined by the reaction from viewers and commentators. Social media was flooded with memes, jokes, and expressions of concern about Eastwood's mental health. The hashtag #Eastwooding became a phenomenon, with people posting photos of themselves talking to empty chairs. Late-night comedians had enough material for weeks of jokes. More damaging was the reaction from within the Republican Party itself. Many delegates who had been in the audience expressed private embarrassment about what they had witnessed. Former Republican officials began calling the performance a disaster and questioning the campaign's judgment in allowing it to happen without proper preparation. The timing of the speech made the damage even worse. Eastwood had appeared directly before Mitt Romney's acceptance speech, which was supposed to be the highlight of the entire convention. Instead of energizing the audience for Romney's remarks, Eastwood's performance had left delegates confused and uncomfortable. Romney's speech, which had been carefully crafted and extensively rehearsed, was now overshadowed by the bizarre spectacle that had preceded it. Television ratings showed that many viewers had changed channels during or immediately after Eastwood's appearance, meaning they missed Romney's speech entirely. The convention's carefully planned momentum had been completely destroyed by 12 minutes of what appeared to be elderly confusion on national television. Medical professionals began weighing in on Eastwood's performance, with some geriatricians suggesting that his behavior might indicate cognitive decline or other age-related issues. While his representatives quickly denied any health problems, the speculation continued and added another layer of concern to the political damage. International reaction was particularly harsh, with foreign commentators expressing bewilderment at what they saw as evidence of American political dysfunction. The empty chair speech became a symbol of everything that seemed wrong with American politics: the theatricality, the lack of substance, and the apparent disconnect from reality. By the next morning, what was supposed to have been a celebration of Republican unity had become a national embarrassment, and Clint Eastwood had transformed from a respected elder statesman into a cautionary tale about the dangers of age and unprepared public appearances. The impact of Clint Eastwood's empty chair speech extended far beyond the 2012 election, fundamentally altering his public image and creating lasting consequences that he would never fully escape. In the weeks and months following the convention, the performance became a cultural touchstone for discussions about age, celebrity endorsements, and political spectacle. The immediate political damage was severe. Post-convention polling showed that Eastwood's appearance had actually hurt Romney's campaign rather than helping it. Focus groups revealed that many independent voters found the performance disturbing and questioned the judgment of a campaign that would allow such a spectacle. The speech became a liability that Republican operatives spent months trying to minimize. For Eastwood personally, the consequences were even more significant. His subsequent film releases were viewed through the lens of concerns about his mental state. Critics began analyzing his directing choices for signs of cognitive decline, and interviews were scrutinized for evidence of confusion or disorientation. The man who had been seen as sharp and vital despite his age was now viewed with a mixture of pity and concern. Hollywood's reaction was largely one of embarrassment and disappointment. Industry colleagues who had respected Eastwood's long career found themselves having to answer questions about whether they thought he was still mentally competent. His talent agency quietly reduced his public appearances, and studios became more cautious about green-lighting his projects. The empty chair became a permanent part of American political iconography, but not in the way Republicans had hoped. Instead of symbolizing strong opposition to Obama, it became a metaphor for confused, out-of-touch conservatism. Democratic politicians and comedians regularly referenced the speech as an example of Republican dysfunction. Academic studies of political communication began using Eastwood's performance as a case study in how celebrity endorsements can backfire spectacularly. The speech was analyzed in courses on public speaking, political strategy, and crisis management as an example of what not to do. Perhaps most damaging was the way the speech affected Eastwood's artistic legacy. Film retrospectives and career assessments now routinely mentioned the empty chair speech as a defining moment that overshadowed many of his professional achievements. The performance became impossible to separate from discussions of his work, creating a permanent asterisk next to his accomplishments. The 2012 Republican convention was supposed to be Mitt Romney's moment of triumph, but instead, it became forever associated with the night a Hollywood legend appeared to have a public breakdown. The empty chair speech served as a reminder that live television is unforgiving, that age and celebrity provide no protection from public humiliation, and that some mistakes can never be undone. Years after the 2012 Republican convention, the empty chair speech remained one of the most referenced moments in modern political history. What had been intended as a surprise endorsement from a respected cultural figure had instead become a symbol of political theater gone wrong and the vulnerability of aging public figures. Clint Eastwood continued making films after the convention, but the context had permanently changed. Every interview was watched for signs of confusion. Every public appearance was analyzed for evidence of cognitive decline. The speech had created a narrative about his mental state that he could never fully escape, regardless of the quality of his subsequent work. The incident also changed how political campaigns approached celebrity endorsements. The 2012 convention became a cautionary tale about the risks of unscripted appearances by high-profile figures. Future campaigns implemented stricter controls over speaker preparation and began requiring rehearsals even for the most trusted surrogates. For the Republican Party, the empty chair speech became a painful lesson about the importance of proper preparation and the dangers of prioritizing spectacle over substance. The incident was frequently cited by party strategists as an example of how a single moment could overshadow an entire event and undermine carefully planned messaging. The speech also highlighted broader cultural anxieties about aging and public performance. Eastwood's appearance sparked uncomfortable conversations about when beloved figures should step back from public roles and how society should handle the decline of its heroes. The incident became a touchstone for discussions about ageism, respect for elders, and the cruel nature of public scrutiny. Perhaps most significantly, the empty chair speech demonstrated the power of live television to create defining moments that transcend their original context. What happened in those 12 minutes became more memorable than anything else at the convention, more discussed than Romney's acceptance speech, and more lasting than any policy proposal or political argument. The image of Clint Eastwood talking to an empty chair became a permanent part of American cultural memory, a moment of surreal political theater that captured something essential about the strangeness of modern American politics. It served as a reminder that even the most respected figures are vulnerable to public humiliation, and that some performances can never be forgotten or explained away. In the end, the empty chair speech became exactly what it appeared to be, a moment when a legend lost his way in front of the entire world, creating a spectacle that overshadowed everything else and changed how he would be remembered forever. Have you ever witnessed someone you respected have a public moment they couldn't recover from? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Don't forget to hit the like button if you liked the video and subscribe if you want videos like this to come. See you in the next story.